General Mkhwanazi, thank you so much. I want to thank you firstly for, all the time that you have dedicated to this process. I think even before the 6th of July and the work that you have been doing, I don't think that there's anybody in this country who does not appreciate the courage that it would have taken you to get to this point. So I really, really want to echo those members who have already passed their gratitude to you. General, I just want to get some of the political issues out of the way arising from your statement. I think it was this morning that you said, after the 2007 conference of the ANC, many of the police officers were recruited to cope. You then said yesterday, as part of your testimony, that you had been approached again to join a political party, which I assume was recent. Can you take us into confidence which political party would have tried to recruit you?
No, there was no specific political party that tried to recruit me, but there was a statement made by EFF that says they wanted me to join them. But they never approached me. It was just a statement.
No, we know you. General Mkhwanazi, so during your testimony, you've been quite critical of General Sibiya. I just want to check that when General Sibiya was reappointed to the South African Police Service, do you know where he was coming from when he rejoined the National Office of SAPS?
The records I have is that he was employed at the city of Johannesburg. He came from the city of Johannesburg.
Do you know when General Sibiya was appointed at City of Joburg?
I'm not sure of the appointment date. I can check on the records that I have here, but I cannot remember exactly out of my head of his appointment. But that will have been done, I think, about maybe 2019, 2020, something about. But I'll find the records and I'll come back to you on it.
Okay, would you happen to know who was the mayor when General Sibiya was appointed in the city of Johannesburg?
I'm not. I'll be lying if I say now. But what I know is that the mayor that was responding or made a statement with regard to the allegations that were leveled against him at the city of Johannesburg, where he made mention of the investigations or the procurement of devices.
General, that's not my question. Let me help you. General Sibiya was appointed to head forensic at the city of Johannesburg in 2016. The mayor then was Mayor Herman Mashaba. Would you know which party Herman Mashaba comes from?
He's a member of or is a leader of the Action SA party.
Thank you, General. You have extensively implicated Honorable Kola Barnett as having interfered with the work of criminal intelligence. General Mkhwanazi, would you happen to know which party Honorable Kola Barnett is from?
The Democratic Alliance.
Thank you. And then my last question, you've also implicated Honorable Adams for having possessed unlawfully classified information. Would you know which party Honorable Adams represents?
Speaking under correction, this is a colored Congress, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you. General, having given those responses, then would you say that there are a number of political parties that are involved in interference with the work of criminal intelligence? Would that be correct?
You would be correct in saying that there are individuals, and some of them, honorable members, might be the members of political parties that might have broken away from the African National Congress at the time when they were part of the National Congress. I spoke about COPE as an example. It was a breakaway from the African National Congress. But by and large, the involvement of political parties in the mismanagement within the ACPS, especially crime intelligence, I don't think it's based on a political party specific. It's members within crime intelligence that approaches anyone that they can influence within the political space to achieve what they want to achieve. So we, as we're investigating, we're not apportioning the blame to a specific political parties, but we are specifically accusing the members of political parties that allow this influence to happen.
Thank you very much, General. General, I know that this question has been asked in one way or the other, but I think it's important, given your testimony around the impact that all of this has had on our criminal justice system. What is your view of how the events since the 6th of July have affected the SAPS? And we're asking because, as you have been speaking, you have very, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say, you know, in an emotional way, but you have demonstrated to all of us the care and regard that you hold the police officers. So since the 6th of July, how has the service been, have members been able to execute their responsibilities? Are things getting better?
The SAPS is a big organization. The incident we spoke about on the 6th of July does not necessarily affect directly the entire organization. It's a portion of the SAPS that got affected. And of course, whatever that people has been speaking about out there, that seems to be painting a bad picture in the SAPS. But what we've seen as the outcome, an impact that our activities on the 6th of July has had in the SAPS is most of the time brings about hope into the intervention that the government and the executive is taking to try and create some stability in the organization. And this is a platform that allows at least the members to vent and see that the management cares about them, because we risk our careers, we risk our lives, and stand on their behalf to try and protect them. So internal within the organization, there's a lot of hope that we are seeing. Members are encouraged to go out there and fight crime. Even those that were a bit demoralized, they now have a bit of hope that something good is coming out of this, and therefore they will be able to do good going forward.
Thank you, General, and I hope that we will be able to assist where we can, really to get that hope realized. Generally, our terms of reference as an ad hoc committee obviously are very much geared to finding solutions. Now, you've made comments about officers capturing ministers, and we ask this genuinely, that how do you think it can be prevented? Because you've said in certain instances it is unknowing, or a similar word. What do you think needs to be done in your view? Is it a pure policing responsibility, or does it go beyond that?
Within the SAPS, it becomes a bit difficult if certain individuals within the SAPS are not going to be able to be standing firm in protecting the institution, and then allowing the executive authority to abuse the system. But I will request an oversight body to look at the mechanisms that are already in existence. Like in this case, I made a reference to the establishment of the office of the secretariat in the office of the Minister of Police, and the functions that are given to that office by the Act. And then we interrogate whether does the Minister of Police make use of that office in the true sense of what the legislature aims for that office to be used for. And if you'll identify early by interviewing and engaging with the DG in that office, whether is any collaboration, a good working relationship between the minister and that office, because once there's a problem there, it then allows the minister to bypass that office and go to the institutions, because that's a safeguard in the South African police that I think the legislature, when government decided to create that office, and in the Act, it was a good move, but it looks like it's an office that has not necessarily been taken serious for what it's supposed to do in advising the minister on the how part. We've got many entities that report to the Minister of Police. There's security on the other side, there's police on the other side, there's IPIT on the other side, and SIRA, they all need some involvement of the minister in one way or another. So, but the moment the minister leaves that office and forget about the police and then runs around and focusing on the South African police service alone, these other entities are going to suffer. And it makes the minister to be busy with operational things in the police and forget about the policy that affects everyone else. Because there's many demands that are sitting as a responsibility of the Minister of Police in that space. So legislation, oversight on what the minister does, it is some of the things that might be looked at. And also the interaction. I was going to say in this case, what I made a recommendation about was to decide whether can we centralize the accounting of crime intelligence. You have two budgets that are passed by this parliament that must be accounted for within one entity of the police. And you find that there's uncertainty by the members of parliament within the portfolio committee on police whether to ask this question or not to ask this question. If they ask this question and the response of police might say that belongs to the JCI, and you go that side, they might turn around and say, no, that's an open account, don't ask us. So we might want to look at how can we best make the SCPS to account in as far as intelligence is concerned. And that's and there we were able to see the role. It must be written in black and white. When you look at the Constitution, you look at the Police Act, crime intelligence is not written in details and the how part to account. It is an intelligence established other than intelligence within the police and the defense that is written in the Constitution. And that is SSA. So any crime intelligence within the police and defense intelligence, well, I did not interrogate much of the defense, but the South African Police Service is not explicit in the Constitution, the how part, as it is with the PCI. Perhaps it's something that might need to be done there so that it's clear on what type of engagement does the intelligence has with the executive authority, if any. They will engage in this fashion when they produce a report, when they do this, when they do that, and must be outlined. The failure to do that or the absence of that, it leads into this interference, that, if you will, which majority of the time is the members from within crime intelligence that goes to influence the executive authority. But because there's no legislation that stops that, it then happens.
Thank you, General. My colleague who spoke earlier was the Chair of Justice. I'm the Chair of Communication, so I take a big interest in issues of media. So I want to go back, General, to your media briefing. I think you've spoken to us on the decision to hold that briefing. Now, I want to ask questions, but I'm afraid, because your testimony, amongst others, indicated that there are people with grabbers, they are listening to our messages and our phones and what. Should we, as this parliament, or at least this ad hoc committee, take that to be an example, or are you putting it on the record? Because I would assume such is unlawful, General.
There are a lot of things that are unlawful that are coming to this country. A listening device gadget can come in pieces. This computer can be stripped in different parts and be brought into this country and assembled here and get used. The legislature should ask themselves a question. What makes, I'm not saying this is what they do, but the question that as a security person that I ask myself, what makes big security companies to be successful in investigation nowadays in this country? There are so many of them. They call themselves, they're forensic investigators, they're this and they're that and they're that. They trace things and they're doing a good job because they're able to find criminals. But how do they do it? That the SCP is not able to do. It's because of the gadgets that they have in their positions. Some journalists nowadays will say they are investigating, but they're actually listening to people's communication, and they come up with reports, they publish them. Because we don't know the existence of these gadgets. And that's why the intelligence of this country need to up their game and help us to stop this. Otherwise, you have people that run amok and they abuse the system that exists in the country. So it's a challenge that we have. I can say that without failure because we've seen, as we investigate and we arrest, we've arrested a lot of criminals that are involved with truck hijacking, as an example. I just want to use a classic example. It's not a listening device, but it's a jamming device. They fly from wherever they fly from, and the information we have, they land in Lesotho. And when they arrive in Lesotho, then they get transported into the country. A small jammer machine, you put it in the car, you drive next to the truck. The truck had left Durban with the cargo, the vehicle drives behind the truck and it blocks the signal. While the truck is driving and the signal is lost, 5 kilometers away, they stop the truck and they divert the truck elsewhere, they disconnect the horse and they take the trailer and they continue the trip with the vehicle next to it, and nobody will pick it up until it arrives wherever it's going. It gets offloaded and the cargo is gone because there's a jammer signal. When you check where these jammers coming from, they are imported from foreign countries into our country, and they are used in committing crime. So the listening devices might be the same thing.
Okay, so we need to tighten up there. General, the questions that I'm going to ask you, and I'm being very, very careful. I started off by saying that we truly commend the work that you're doing, but I also would not want us to be accused of dereliction of our duty as Parliament. You know, we've been there before. So there are questions that I have to ask you in that regard. You said that had you not had that media briefing on the 6th of July, we would be picking up bodies. And the words that you used was that we don't want to see blue on blue. Would it be correct, General, to say that the SAPS is factionalized?
It could be yes or no, but to some degree, I cannot say it's factionalized. We had experienced this when there was amalgamation that happened in '95, because a Venda-speaking person from Limpopo and a Xhosa-speaking person couldn't necessarily get along because we came from different cultures. And people from the MK, Fumana Statutory Force, and the likes that came in, there was a bit of challenge back then. But as the time progresses, we started adjusting. Training started being synchronized, and we started drilling the same pace, and commands and everything. The culture started building together. What becomes a challenge nowadays, maybe to some degree you could say at the head office there's some problems. You can call that. Because almost everyone that sits at the head office, they come from different parts of the country. And they tend to favor each other. And that's why we start feeling a bit of a challenge. But by and large, we'll have a police station commander in Eastern Cape, in Western Cape, who come from Limpopo, and is doing well in the province where he's working. So that cross-pollination in the province, I don't think factionalism in terms of that exists in the organization anymore. Politically, then we have a problem. Because there is this affiliation of favor or patronage to certain political parties that exist. So, and it affects, and I must say, in the main, senior officers that came into the organization that were not necessarily part of the organization growing up within, because they come with a specific position political. That is one. But the biggest problem we have politically in the main is the existence of our colleagues, and they're going to fight with me when I mention this, the labor unions. When you have the labor unions that was established and get affiliated with the structures that align with political parties, like in this case, we have one labor union that is affiliated to COSATU, and COSATU is a member of an alliance of a political party. You then have a police officer that sits with the minister of police around the table, that sits with the president of the country around the table as comrades, and they discuss things. When that person must now account to and subject himself to a commander at the station, he finds it difficult. The incident that happened in Durban when this president visited at the death of Mr. Mkhwanazi in Pietermaritzburg, there were tensions within the police, and the premier was unhappy with a specific policeman in the province, and the minister was not happy with that policeman in the province. I had to sit down and ask this policeman, but why the minister has a problem with you, and why the premier has a problem with you? What did you do wrong? You are here in Maritzburg as a police officer. And he confessed to me, he said, no, Gerald, I was a member of POCRO, and these were my comrades. I happened to spend more time at Ngandla when there was this division. I stick to Ngandla, and they didn't like it when we had a fallout. So they take that fallout and they associate this person with the murders and the poor investigations that are happening on these matters that are happening. And they point a finger at him and say, you are not investigating these cases, you are messing up these cases because you are favoring that opposition team. And that started creating a problem within the organization. So I think the labor union's presence, maybe now slowly looks like the union is pulling away from the political activism that they were there before. But the presence of that activity and mobilization within the labor union and affiliation with the political structure created a problem in the organization, that you end up having the word comrades being used interchangeably amongst members at the police stations. And that then started creating problems because you have members that belong to other political parties that don't like this one, but that create a conflict.
Thanks, General. Maybe let me substitute the word for infighting, and I'm going to get off this point just now. General, when you were acting National Commissioner, is it correct that General Khumalo was head of counterintelligence and General Masemula was acting head of criminal intelligence?
General Khumalo was a brigadier. I had deployed him at crime intelligence as an acting person. The head of counterintelligence at the time, I cannot remember because there were a few generals that I had temporarily removed from crime intelligence and placed elsewhere while I deployed these ones on an acting capacity. So he was just there acting, not as a permanent.
General Khumalo?
Yeah.
And General Masemula?
Masemula was the acting divisional commissioner.
Thank you. General, there's an issue that concerns, I suppose, Parliament and society as a whole, the issue of whistleblowers. It's coming across that South Africans, we are losing a lot of whistleblowers, and whenever we raise these issues in Parliament, we are told that there's a protection services and witness protection. Why are we failing South Africans in the regard of protection of whistleblowers?
I think the problem that from my assessment of the real whistleblowers, the people who are privy to sensitive information, is that they share that information at the wrong platforms. If you have incriminating information, the best place to take it to is the law enforcement environment so that they do something about it. But if you're going to take it into a media house so that it gets published and that gets leaked, that you are the one that came with it, that media house is not going to give you a safe protection at all. They won't. They take your information and make money out of it, but you're not going to get protection. But if you take that information that you have and approach the highest office of the law enforcement and you present and say, I want to present something to you, come and you disclose it, and you say, from now on, my life is in your hand, I need security. And if that person doesn't act on it, then you can go and report in another structures. If that's what the whistleblowers will do, it will assist. But to blow a whistle about something supposed to be criminating, but you're not blowing it within the law enforcement environment, you are blowing it just in the air, then you're going to be attacked. Then who to blame after that? Blame government? Blame the law enforcement? How did they know about you being a whistleblower? Sometimes it becomes a problem. So you'll find that so-called whistleblowers, some of the people, they will raise issues within their own environments, tell their executive about the wrong that are happening in places. But if those things are criminal in nature, even that whistleblower has an obligation to approach the law enforcement, because that's where you're going to get protection. And then you can demand the protection there. But if you're taking it to your own bosses at the workplace, and you hope they're going to provide you, it's going to be another challenge to get that. That is what whistleblowers in the country need to understand. That sometimes you need not to show your face. You just have to take information and supply it to law enforcement and say, I request an investigation on this, anonymously. So you are whistleblowing.
I'm sorry, General. Yeah, it's a very, very serious matter. And I think and please, thank you for that response. Can we do more? And what should be done to protect whistleblowers? Beyond the fact that they come and report to you, unless you are saying, you are satisfied that if they come to law enforcement, they will be protected. and the whistleblowers that are dying in the country are outside, but can more be done? And have you perhaps applied your mind to how that could be done?
In a country like South Africa, where a criminal is protected in the sense that he's protected, it becomes a difficult task to protect the whistleblowers. I can say that without hesitation. If a whistleblower is going to talk about a specific individual that is involved in the wrong, and the laws of the country allows a speedy response in removing that person away from society, that will give about comfort to the whistleblower. But with the absence of that, and with the lengthy court processes that we have as a country, it then allows the perpetrator to then victimize the complainant or the whistleblower. So to give comfort to the whistleblowers, my recommendation will be try not to make yourself known. See something, say something about it, but try and hide your identity. Because the moment you become known as to you are the one that are causing this problem, you're going to be attacked. And the likelihood of you being protected is going to be slim. I must indicate a protection of a whistleblower, if a full protection that will need to be provided, it disorganizes your family lifestyle. Because we take you away from where you stay and we send you somewhere else in the place that is foreign to you, and you stop doing the things that you used to do. I'm sure how many of you that have bodyguards that walk around with bodyguards. It's a very uncomfortable situation to walk around with bodyguards. Yes, they will be there guarding you, but if they crowd your space, they take away your privacy. And many people don't enjoy that. So that's why people end up not participating in those programs, because you are disrupting their lifestyle. They don't want it. So when they say they don't want it, then they get isolated and they get killed. And that becomes a trial. So that's my recommendation, can only be that while the government can try and create structures to provide safety to whistleblowers, but by and large, with this level of crime and corruption that we have in the country, whistleblowers must try and hide their identities. Don't make your identity known. Report something via someone if you need to, but try not to make your identity known. Because the moment you make your identity known, you become a target.
Thank you, General. General, you spoke extensively about the unification of the SAP and Homeland Security, but also the decision to demilitarize SAPS. What was your view, or what is your view about that decision to demilitarize from a force to a service? And then also the reversal, I call it reversal by stealth, where again you would have had, your titles changed back to military titles. What is your view on demilitarization, and do you think that's the way we need to go?
Yeah, well, I happened to work at Division HRD, and I sat down with the commissioners that were behind the National Development Plan, and I asked them these questions. What were you envisaging when you came up with this on the NDP? And the answer was just simple. We were getting rid of the ranks. That was their demilitarization, nothing else. And when you go back to the military ranks, that means you are militarizing again. So that was their conclusion. So when I said, but our methods of operations and the likes, we did not have a problem with that. They said, no, we never had issues with that. You are a service, you serve when it's time to serve, and you combat when it's time to combat. So we never had a problem with those approaches. But because you moved away from the civil ranks, titles, to a military rank, we felt that you militarized. But I'm going to invite the ad hoc committee to get those commissioners, if they're still alive, that authored that document, to come and explain you what was in their mind when they wrote that. And so I felt then if that was the case, we go back to what the Constitution says, and a simple amendment on the regulations, you get rid of these generals' ranks, and we continue with what exists as commissioners, and problem is solved. That means we tick the box on what the NDP has envisaged, because that's what I picked up from them. But in the true sense of things, and I think the things we are doing in the police as we are operating is far more different than how it used to be done in the past. I think the legislation is directing us to behave differently towards the citizens. The court process forces us to behave differently towards the citizens. So I think there are already those controls that exist. I don't see us going back into how things used to be back during apartheid days. The decentralization part in relation to my recommendation, it was more about trying to mitigate the risk that we've seen. The powers vested upon one person. The mere fact this team wanted to ascend someone into this high office, it was because this person was going to be able to control the entire country. Then that becomes a risk. That's when I said, no, but beside the workload that we've been complaining about, this is a new threat. This is a new risk that we are seeing now. Let's mitigate it in this fashion. That's my recommendation based on that.
Thank you, General. General, you know why I was asking about demilitarization, and what I'm getting from you is that there's no difference. I'm very concerned about the camouflage that you wore. You've explained why. Now, it's happened. I mean, you get a lot of credit for the work that the police are doing in KwaZulu-Natal, and I think you've become a very trusted figure there. But when you come out in camouflage, and you explained, you said you were in a mode, are you not worried that you would create a precedence that may be emulated, that now we have moved from this democratic state, we're almost militarized in our approach, and you then becoming the face of that?
No, I'm not going to be worried, because within the SCPS, the camouflage is known as to who wears the camouflage. There's no confusion in the SCPS. In the public, yes, there might be confusion, but internally in the organization, every employee knows that that uniform belongs there. That is not the only camouflage we have. That's a special task force. There's another camouflage for the presidential unit. They walk around these passages all the time. You see them with the president. It's a camouflage. So it does not create much of the problem, although we were against it when it started, but it is there and is adopted in the organization as one of the things. Perhaps honorable members might want to interrogate some of the reforms that should have been there as recommendations when this organization, South African Police Service, was formed in 1995. One of the recommendations which maybe was omitted, if we're to introduce it, might have an impact financially and otherwise. One of them was that we said we are amalgamating 11 police agencies, but in the reality, we did not do that. In the reality, we allowed the South African police, the national government, law enforcement, to consume all these other homelands into it, because we adopted the culture and practice and everything else for the SAP. There's nothing that was borrowed from Ciskei, Transkei, Kazankulu into this organization. We stick to the rules of what the South African police was doing, and everyone else had to transform into this. Yes, there are some adjustments that had to be done to conform to some legislation that exists, but the culture within the organization remained that of the SAP. The dress code that we wear, it remains that which was chasing you on the street during apartheid days. It remains the same to date. It might be a different design, a modern design, but the colors are still the same. So nothing has changed. So if we really want to transform from what the SAP used to be, you might look at the dress code. There's some of the things that were recommendations back then which were not implemented. General Cel, when he came in, he spoke about it, but there was no movement in terms of trying to introduce changes in that. So we still stuck to that uniform that we have not changed. The camouflage is one of the uniform. The task force camouflage I was wearing is one of the uniform that was there in the past. When a decision was taken for the SCPS to get rid of camouflage, special task force was the only one that was allowed that these task force members can remain with the camouflage. Hence their dress code today, it's camouflage. They don't wear blue uniform because it is there and is provided for in the dress code of the police. So it's some of the things that the committee might want to, or the portfolio committee might want to start looking at, whether do we change this or we don't change this.
Thank you, General. I'm going to try and move a little quicker. General, you've raised concerns about members of the media who have been given access to classified information for publishing. Now, you then said that you would want counterintelligence to investigate this. Do you not think that this is not a bit, you don't think that this is overhanded? I mean, there are forums to deal with complaints against the media. Don't you think that going the counterintelligence route, why would you want to use counterintelligence to deal with media and journalists?
We use counterintelligence to investigating anything that is a threat to the national security of the country. So if a journalist is a threat, he needs to be countered. I said in correcting myself, that it is not the media house, but it is individuals that are employed within that media house that are being handled by the rogue elements. So therefore, you cannot ignore that and say, we're not going to launch all our full force investigation towards journalist that is involved in the wrong, simply because he's wearing a badge of a media house. We'll investigate.
General, can I just clarify? So is the problem the story that is written, what is reported, or is it the source of the information? Where exactly is the problem? I'm raising this because, I mean, obviously there are a lot of things that the media writes that many of us don't like. We don't have counterintelligence, but is it the report itself, or is it the information, the source where they get it from?
When the information, let me talk a typical example of what has happened recently. When we are told about the report that comes from, that's supposed to be produced by the Inspector General of Intelligence, it's supposed to be in a position of the minister of that department that is registering a complaint. It's supposed to be with the Inspector General of Intelligence. It's supposed to be with Parliament, Joint Standing Committee of Intelligence. But when you find that report being presented by a journalist in an article, it means someone has done something wrong. So then the investigation must be launched. It is not the investigation against a journalist per se, but it's an investigation against the leakages of that. Journalist is a recipient, meaning is part of people that participated in the criminality of distributing that sensitive information out there. And it must be held accountable, together with the people that pass that information to him or her. That's the type of investigations I'm talking about. That will make even the journalist to be responsible with information. When you get something, start reading about whether this is classified or not. Speak to your editors and say, what risk this is going to bring to the institution if we go out public with it? Shouldn't we take this and present it to the right authority ourselves? It came to our attention, let's take it to that authority and say, do something about this, we are keeping a check on you, we want a report of what you're doing about it. A couple of months later, they demand a report and say, we presented this thing to you, tell us what you've done, and then they can write a story. But if they themselves are not doing that, becoming responsible citizens and helping us to stop those internal, because they're saying they're protecting sources. I read the WhatsApp of a Deputy National Commissioner. If a Deputy National Commissioner says, I've got a source at Crime Intelligence, and yet he's a boss of Crime Intelligence, but he says, I've got a source at Crime Intelligence. He takes that information, sensitive as easy, give it to a Deputy Minister. A Deputy Minister will say, well, there's nothing wrong with it. And he keeps quiet with it. He has an obligation to discipline this general and discipline anyone else. Then while on the other side, it is an investigation of the complaint. But there must be consequences of those that are bringing the complaint in that fashion, because then they are bypassing the process.
Thank you, General. I think it's my second last issue. I want to go back to this matter that I tried to raise yesterday, and Honorable Malema shut me down. Your visit, General, with Mr. Ngabinde to Minister Mkhwanazi. Now, you said today that you went to see him because he's a high-profile person in the province. Okay, I don't know if it's the norm, and I'll be honest, I did ask a few ministers, and I said to them, do the provincial commissioners in your provinces just come and see you because you're a high-profile person? And that was not the answer was in the negative. So my question, General, is why did you go there, knowing, as you said to us, that Mr. Ngabinde, I'm not sure the word that you used, something like that he was a shady fellow, and you told Minister Mkhwanazi at that meeting. So what was the purpose of the meeting? What was it to discuss? And then you then said to Minister Mkhwanazi, this is not a good guy.
Now, let me correct that, Honourable Member. The last part you're talking about was to the acting Minister Khatshaliya, not Mr. Mkhwanazi. Was a recent meeting that was held in Pretoria at the Pretoria College. In the presence in that meeting was the acting Minister Khatshaliya, the National Commissioner, and the two deputies, and myself. That's where we discussed that. The original meeting of Minister Mkhwanazi, at the time he was not in the police. He was not a minister in the police. I said I was close to Mr. Ngabinde. I might not explain to where did we go first before we passed at the minister's house. But we eventually passed the minister's house where he said, no, he wants to go and see the minister. And I thought there was something strategic, maybe some of the serious things I want to talk about. But we ended up, the three of us, just sitting together and talking general until we left. So I thought it was just a meet and greet. And also just give assurance that he knows the minister. Yes, on hindsight, I now realize perhaps it might have been him trying to impress the minister that he's close to me, that the minister shouldn't worry about whatever they think he might need to be assisted on, because I have this relationship with me. I suspect maybe that could be the reason. But there was nothing wrong on what we've done. I had met many other people. Some of them might not necessarily be in the executive position in the past, but through meeting through someone else, let me meet so-and-so, they meet so-and-so. Some members here in this portfolio committee, I met them in that fashion. When the senior officer wants to see you, or the member of government, or the leader in society that wants to talk to you, I meet with them. Some of them come to my office, some of them I meet them wherever we engage with. I don't discriminate against anyone. Taxi people, bosses, I meet with them.
We've seen you meet with them, General. But General, the reason I'm asking this is that, did you know at that point that he was a person of interest in the matter that you were talking to us about?
I said when I started, honorable members, that when I met the minister, he was not in the police, so he had no business with the police. He was a good man dealing with water, if I'm not mistaken, at the time. So there was no relationship with the police at all. Nkabinde was unemployed, was not even working at the office of the minister. So there was no anything that's got to do with work at all in that engagement. Fast forward, the minister approaches Nkabinde, say, I want you to be chief of staff. I'm now being appointed as a minister of police. That's where then the relationship, work relationship started. Now, because the person I've already met, my expectation is that he knows that even the chief of staff is a person I know, so it's easy for him. If he needs something, he can talk to me about whatever. That's why it was easy for me when this letter came out on the 2nd of January 2025. It was easy for me to call Nkabinde and say, please arrange a meeting between me and you and the minister, because I wanted to talk serious business now. I was still under the impression that the person I met before, because there was just a social meeting, it won't be a problem for minister to meet with me, because at least he knows my face now. But unfortunately, that did not happen.
Thank you. General, I'm going to push you a little bit on the IMC, because you said if that letter had not come out, we would not be sitting here, amongst other things. Have you participated in other IMC support structures before, like task teams, outside of this one, the political killings task team?
I've been involved in South Africa and abroad, where there's a lot of interventions done by this government. I've been part of it.
Okay, so an IMC, please let me know if I'm correct, an IMC would be able to give a political policy direction, I see that we've used them interchangeably, to establish a task team, its duration and its disbandment, am I correct?
No, in this case, the IMC was tasked in resolving a problem, not establishing a team. Theirs was to make sure that there is a strategy, a plan put in place to deal with the problem that must be satisfied to satisfy the executive authority. That was their interest. The how part, what is it, a task team, or is another prioritization of investigation, was left to the National Commission at the time.
But General, doesn't it seem a bit absurd to you that ministers don't, so I would assume a decision that says disband that political killings task team is a policy decision. Why would you think that it's not a policy decision? What I understood from General Masemula's testimony was that he had a problem with an instruction that says immediately. You've said the decision was unlawful. So is it correct to assume that what you are unhappy about is being told disband it immediately? Is saying disband the team without giving you direction a policy decision?
Honourable members, my biggest concern with the minister's directive was that the minister gives an instruction about the disestablishment of the team, and yet the minister did not approve the establishment of the team. So why will you disestablish something you did not establish? That's a problem that I had right at the beginning. So I somehow forgave him, thinking that he's new, he doesn't know. That's why I felt that I'm responsible, I have a responsibility to brief him about the background and history of this team, so that this decision that he have reached is informed by something. So what I'm paging through here and I'm trying to find, and I'm not sure where I'm going to find, but there's an annexure in some of the documentations that I have on a statement that I deposited at the commission with regard to the very first approval of the team. That letter, when I find it here, I'll be able to reference that in the approval of the task team was drafted, my first signature was me, proposed this is what we want to do, and then we had other generals. The current National Commission was one of the people that made the recommendation. Jared Sibia from the Hawks made the recommendation. Jared Zumane, if I'm not mistaken, from Free State made the recommendation. Eventually, the National Commission approved. There are no ministers nowhere to be seen. And later, the ministers come to be briefed about the plan that we have put together. We brief them about what is approved already, and they are happy. So they didn't come there to approve it. We have it in black and white as an evidence. So why you then want to disestablish something we did not establish?
Okay, let me ask you this. In terms of established SAPS protocols, how would a task team then be disbanded or dissolved, disestablished? In terms of your established protocols, is there a way in which you disband such task teams? I'm assuming others have been disbanded before.
The commander, the person who approves the setting up of such, is a person who decides how such must stop. The commander will understand the work of the police. And in this case, the commander, being a national commissioner, knows very well that there is case dockets in court. So when he decides to stop something, he must be mindful of saying, how do I manage these dockets that are in court? Because if I just say stop, and I don't direct what must happen to the docket and what happened to the investigating officers that are carrying these dockets, it's going to have an impact that's going to affect the value chain of the administration of justice, and therefore it's going to have consequences that are negative towards the organization. He won't do that because he's a trained, experienced person who knows what it takes to do that. So the commander will decide at any time that there's no need for this, we disestablish this, but then he issues a directive, the how part. I'll give a classic example. There was a directive recently about the operation that we're running in the mines. Because of the car fund that exhausted, that we don't have, that was assisting us to run that operation, there was a directive of how we should then demobilize on that operation. So the demobilization is structured. You don't just switch off the light and go. There are resources, there are personnel, there's commitment that the members have made in the accommodation where they stay over time. So if you decide, pack your bags now and leave, you've already paid for the accommodation for a month, you're going to lose that money. What happens to that? So there are many implications that a person who doesn't know the operations will make a decision that are going to have such negative impact without knowing.
I'm going to ask two questions together. The PKTT, how many cases did it resolve and at what cost during its lifespan, if you've got those numbers, General? And then was any part of the work of the PKTT funded from the covert fund, that slush fund? My last question relates to the presidents that you spoke about. Were you happy with the response of President Zuma in 2011? What do you think President Zuma should have done? At some point, you referenced that General Fani Masemola spoke to President Ramaphosa. In your view, what information relating to this operational issues of PKTT and what does a president generally have access to? So is this information that presidents generally know, they know how to respond to it, they've got it on their fingertips. I'm speaking especially on that matter as it relates to President Ramaphosa. My final question, General, and I promise this is the final one. You said something about the appointment of National Commissioner, or you spoke about how a National Commissioner was appointed, and you said Paul O'Sullivan had a list that he had to okay. Now, when this National Commissioner, General Masemula, was appointed, there was an open process that was public around the appointment of the National Commissioner. I think a similar process has started now, I think, for the NDPP. What are you saying that it was Paul O'Sullivan's process? Thank you, General.
Well, maybe because I couldn't capture all the questions. The last part, the appointment, we know for a fact that it is a president's process to appoint the National Commissioner. But the process that was taken that landed into the president appointing, it is my understanding that there was a group of generals in the police that were invited for an interview. And there was a panel that was set up, and the Minister of Police was part of that panel, General Ngqele, and people were interviewed. And the names then were submitted at the president's recommendation that should allow the president to decide. But it looks like perhaps between that process, the completion of the interviews, and before the president appointed, maybe, I'll be under correction on this one, maybe Mr. Paul O'Sullivan intercepted that recommendation list. And whether he was approached by whoever that he claims to be approached, that they approached him to vet that list that comes from the panel. To decide whether amongst these ones, who's the best. And because him was saying that he was giving these names and he had to profile them and give it back to the president. Is Mr. Paul O'Sullivan who says that. So if he comes here and he says, and he said it publicly, that's what worried me, that when a private person like him can come and claim that he participated in the appointment of the National Commission, then means we are doomed as a country. So if he's invited to come here and he come and confirm that which he said in public, is a person that tends to talk freely. So I believe he will speak the truth as to who approached him to do the vetting and what was the role of that vetting and why did he do that. And then you can ask the people that assigned him to do that, because he's not a member of government. We have state security or many other intelligence environments that could have profiled the people, but it looks like he was chosen. But who chose him? I don't know. But I know that there was this process was done of interviews before the signature of the president, which I think, if I speak under correction, I do not know what had happened in the past in other appointments of national commissioners, but I think this might have been the first one where there was a panel that sat and people were interviewed. In the past, like it happened with Pierre, you just saw a letter, yes, this person is appointed as a national commission. You go on Google to try and check who is this person. And what is the profile of the person. We had to learn when she appeared before us to know who the person is. There were no interviews and stuff done prior to that. So this might have been the first. Might have had its own flaws, but at least there was an interview conducted there.
Thank you, Honorable Sangoni.
Thank you. Although you didn't answer me if any funding of the PKTT came from the slush fund.
Oh yeah, maybe I should respond on that one. And that's why I said you asked a couple of questions. The PKTT we presented before the commission, and I annexed the performance of the PKTT. That presentation was made before this portfolio committee in the past. And I will, once I get the reference into it, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members, I'll be able to show you exactly. But the PKTT's work and successes, I sit here on my NSM 3, and it's sitting on page 30. If you go to that NSM 3, on page 30, paragraph 85, it talks about successes of the PKTT. Well, it doesn't talk about the budget specific on this one, but it reflects on the successes, and that runs up until number 98, which will then be the page 38. And this is on the statement that I deposed at the Nhlanhla Commission as a reference as annexed here, NSM 3, for your own reading. The cost, the total budget cost, was also presented at the Commission, and I can find it here. We detailed and we attached the approval processes of every approval for the team to work, and every budget the CFO have allocated to the PKTT. And we made it clear that there was no money from any other cost center that was used by the PKTT except the specific allocation ring-fence for that purpose. So the story of police station money that Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, as Honorable Member Kona Barnard said it, I take money from police stations and I send to PKTT. She says it in public. She doesn't invite me to Parliament to come and answer that, but she says it in public. And there's money from Crown Intelligence that is used at the PKTT. These are all malicious stories that were published out there, but with no facts on them. We come and account for every cent of government, and we present before this Portfolio Committee on Police for them to hold us accountable. And we can bring these details. If they're not here, I can give this to the ad hoc committee so that you know every single cent that was ever used. There is analyst that says, so much money, 500,000 rand used on laundry. How many people are washing clothes? That's in academia, honorable members, who shows a capacity of not able to think as an academia. You take 500,000 rand, you don't even know how many members we're talking about. And you divide the cost of this washing over so many years, 2018 to date. How much it translates you to per day or per week washing. Then you'll be able to get into this figure. So sometimes we take the number and said, so millions of rand have been spent. And we don't calculate as to for how long has this project been running. Is this money justifiable as compared to the other operations that have run this long? Then you can draw comparison. But if your thinking capacity is challenged, you're not going to reach that conclusion because you won't apply the tool they're supposed to apply to reach a conclusion. You're going to be a researcher that is going to go out in the public and go and talk about it. And when some of us listen to it, we get disappointed because these are the people who teach our children at school that come and tell us, South Africans, about the quality of their knowledge of a subject that they're supposed to teach children when they present before us. It's disappointing, to say the least.